This is about rediscovering what it means to live together in right livelihood, to live together effectively. We're going to draw from the past, we're going to be inspired from the future, but we're going to live in the present.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Tell me when you're ready. We'll just give you. Okay. So, Gaviotis in Colombia, large area, very desert. You know, hadn't really flowered for many, many years. And what was the story there with that?
Well,
the biologists, they came back in and began to find ways to bring water through there.
Well, what they did actually, they imported a pine from the Caribbean, and they started making a pine plantation because they wanted to have an income crop, which would be the resin from the pine, which would go into paints. And so they planted this pine plantation. And the problem they found was that the pines are sensitive to day length for flowering and fruiting, flowers and for coning. And the problem was that the pine had evolved in the Caribbean where you get a change in day length because it's further from the equator, but they were basically on the equator. And so they never got the pines to be fertile or anything like that. So, but anyhow, they planted a bunch of stuff, and the pine forest wasn't going to spread or anything like that. So the pines were basically dead. And this was a big worry. Are you going to put a new species here that's going to then invade? But it didn't because of that thing. So anyhow, then what happened was the pines created an economic thing for them. They were able to get the resin out. But as the pine forest grew up, it created a microclimate underneath the pine forest that allowed trees to come into this area. So no one's really sure if there were seeds in the soil from any old forest that was there. There's some theories that there may have been more forested historically, or if there's these riparian corridors that have some trees around them. And then just outside of those corridors, right near the little rivers, it's basically what's called a white sand savanna. It's essentially a very wet area that has extremely poor, very highly porous soils, and you get this grasslands that tend to burn. It's not just grasslands, it's all kinds of things like sedges and things, but it looks like grass to people. But anyhow, once those pines could handle those conditions, they got established and it created a microclimate that allowed the trees to persist, and the trees started growing up underneath the pines, and they end up overtopping the pines.
Wow.
See, this is if you think of this from a biomimetic or biomimicry perspective. In other words, how we can look at nature and how nature organizes itself, what conditions need to be in place in order for new things to grow, and how to create that new, the new climate, if you will. If you parallel that with how societies grow and communities grow, if you think of the consciousness in society, what do we mean by that? We mean consciousness is really the carrier. It's the field in which our culture, our cultural history, our knowledge, our past experience, all again about locality. If you think about all the skills that all our forefathers have brought to a particular area, and these often become dormant, and they become dormant very much as communities have become more desertified.
And disconnected.
So what we've been doing in Well is really creating, we've been, as Jason's saying, it's almost like we've been planting a few trees in order to set up the condition where a lot of this cultural knowledge can begin to re-emerge. And what is this cultural knowledge? It's the creative intelligence that is in the consciousness of the community. We have all of the skills, whether they're dormant or whether they're expressed, but we have all the skills to look after each other. We have people what? We have people that have a passion for health and healing. We have local herbs here. We have people who are passionate about how to create the infrastructure to get our water to ourselves. And we have people passionate about food. In France they talk about food as medicine. And if you eat right, things tend to go right. So suddenly, when you start to live cooperatively with your natural environment, health improves. You need less and less pharmacology that is artificial. You have more balance. In the same way you start building healthy relationships, people start to walk more rather than having to drive everywhere.
Yes, yes.
So we start to think about how to redesign our communities around these very natural processes. And these are all seeds in the collective consciousness of a community, which when the right conditions are there, and that's what we've been creating in Well, is the conditions for this revival. And it is a revival. It's a reinvention of what it means to live together.
Well, to live.
Back. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting a farm at this grammar school, and part of the point of it is not just what's going to happen at that school, but it's to demonstrate that, my gosh, you actually can make a living by growing food for other people, which in our culture now it seems to be just like a nutty perspective. What? People could actually make a living feeding each other? So that used to be here.
Partly to intrigue the young people to consider that as a vocation.
Or landowners.
We just had a wonderful collaborative event called Come Home to Eat.
Mm-hmm.
It was a celebration of local food, and is the kickoff to starting a local food coalition that brings together the farmers and the consumers, and what do they need in terms of regulations, or because our farmers are not making it because of course they're competing with the Walmarts.
Right.
And we learned that. So we had a wonderful panel. It's a good hour of a panel of a dozen farmers representing different aspects. One CSA and another that does fruit and another that does the growers market vegetables and so on. Grass-fed beef, and we could learn what the challenges are, what the problems are, what works well. And one of the sobering things to learn is that in our two high schools in our western part of the county, agriculture and farming are not even on the list of what the vocational counselors talk to kids about.
Yes,
even though a third of the students are involved in 4-H in some way.
and furthermore,
because they can't make a living at it.
Right.
That's
not
what's
only can they not make a living, but if you think about the quality of the food that our students and our school children eat, which is affecting their learning ability, their attention span, their memory, their ability to focus and study. So what we're doing in the school here is we're bringing back the school farm, and it's not just a project to create food, it's a project to educate us on healthy nutrition.
Sure.
And so that'll be part of the curriculum here, and we're going to spread it from one school to all schools. Now what this means to the imported junk food industry is very significant. As in Britain now, there's a big initiative there to ban junk food in state schools. And this is one of our goals here in Well, is to recreate nutrition such that there's less dependency upon highly concentrated sugars and fats and sorted foods, which are really the essence of what junk food is. And ban that stuff. But we'll ban that not by pushing it away, but by bringing in true nutrition. And that's, again, we've got to facilitate, we've got to educate, incubate those farms and ideas. And in the same way, we've got to be watchful. We've got to make sure that our children are growing healthily. And this is a whole
holistic stuff here.
This is a whole systems approach.
Of course it is.
It's holistic.
Multi-layers here.
It's holistic. You see, and society and the way society's got organised has become so fragmented.
Exactly.
And we've got to come back to this idea that the knowledge that we need and the skills that we need in order to be once again a healthy, responsible, and safe community are already here.
It's what I like about that is your underlying premise. Because the underlying premise here is we have what we need. If we do not, it will be attracted to us. It will come.
Right.
But if you come with the assumption of the glass is full, rather than the glass is half empty, that positive approach seems to me to be a part of what attracts, as well as the holistic vision. It's not just piecemeal.
Right.
Piecemeal.
Well, I could get back to farmers, like the school system basically is telling students that you can't make a living as a farmer. We're not even going to tell you that's an option. And what's interesting is if you look outside of the large industrial ag system, there are a lot of people making it now as small farmers. But they're not. You don't notice them because they don't have marketing campaigns. It's more word of. There are clusters of farms in certain areas that are small family farms, and they sometimes come together and will have a marketing campaign where they promote the entire concept of, in this valley,
Right,
we have
right.
some great farmers.
We're beginning to do that.
Yeah.
In the counties just south of us, in Placer County, they have Placer Grown, the
Right.
organization that's.
Sure.
And I think as
Exactly.
we get into local food, local pride and our
Yeah.
slow food
Yeah.
movement and so on, those are all those things that are going to move in that direction.
Exactly.
Right.
It was just sobering to
Yeah.
hear, however, from this panel of 12,
Right.
is that none of them, only one of them, could make a living on their farming without an outside job.
Exactly.
Which tells us how much the forces have been arrayed against them in
Yes.
industrial ag.
It's very stressful.
And therefore, how do we as a community take responsibility to make sure our farmers stay afloat?
Support them, yeah.
Get their ag land,
Exactly.
our conservation easements that we're doing, or other ways, zoning, which, is a hard uphill battle at this point with the current supervisors that we have, because it's so much more lucrative for a farmer, because most of them, the average age is 59.
I know, it's amazing.
Right, and the young ones aren't showing up because they don't have the money to buy this expensive land,
Right.
which is more lucrative for the farmer to sell off to be subdivided
Right.
and take more miles
Well, this-
to
see,
heat.
this-
It's like that
this is-
vicious cycle.
This is how, exactly so, and this is how what people often refer to as the current paradigm, which is a globalized system.
Yes. Yes.
With centralized control. It's command and control. This is how corporations tend to work. They're empire builders,
Yes.
and like all empires, they feed and suck from.
From the periphery,
Periphery.
right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
feed you into the
Yeah.
empire.
And this is exactly how cancers grow in a body. They're not working, although there are cancer cells present in everyone, they only get activated when the coherence of the organism is gone. And what we mean by coherence is thinking in a holistic, coherent way. And we've lost that. But what's sweet about this whole initiative with Willits Economic LocaLization and the many communities now that are doing this as well. We've just had a conference here in Willits called the Regional Localization Networking Conference. We had over 30 communities here for an entire weekend sharing all their ideas, their best practice, their dreams and hopes and aspirations. And we started to educate each other about how to create a corridor along this northwest
Yes.
part of California
Yeah.
to really start to work together. And this is when it gets really exciting, because when communities start to cooperate together, we once again reinvent the idea of trading partners.
And we really didn't get too far into that in the conference yet, but you sowed the seeds.
Yeah.
Because Gary Snyder, the poet that lives across the ridge from us,
Oh,
who has
really?
been, yes,
Wonderful man.
hello
Yeah.
Gary,
Wonderful
really.
man. Friend of Alan Watts.
For the Raven, it's a mile. For the rest of it, it's about 10 miles around through the River Canyon. Gary's vision, when talking about life after oil, we had a recent article in the Sierra Citizen about that. His view is that we don't have really good soils in our mountainous part of our land. The valley, some of the valley sections of our county are good ag land. But in the mountainous areas where we are, we're better for fuel, for timber. So he said, I don't think our really small local region can really truly be self-sustaining, self-sufficient in everything, certainly. He says, we're going to need some trading partners.
There we go.
And when we had our Eat Local experiment last summer, we had 1 week, a number of us just ate local. And I defined it in peak oil terms,
Well, you can walk.
within bicycling, walking kind of distance. And of
right.
course, the first thing, we had plenty of eggs, we had chickens in our area, but what I first missed was salt. And I knew immediately why people traded. So I know we will need the trading partners, because you have wood in your area, but you probably don't, there are other things that you're missing.
Yeah, salt, yeah.
Yeah.
In
See, and this is the thing
coffee,
Citrus
well, all of
fruits.
us,
Citrus.
citrus, right.
and the power of rediscovering true trading partners is that you create this then interdependency, and that means there's mutual respect, and so when we talk about communities becoming economically localized, they cannot ultimately do it on their own. They're doing it in collaboration with, and this is how
That's
we
an
actually
important part of
build
the notion.
We build our security by linking with each other and having these right living relationships.
The thing is that a lot of what's driven globalization was also the idea of interdependency. And it was sort of peace through prosperity, peace through trade. And the problem was that the scale at which it occurred was so unsustainable.
And it was
led to
also
so many disruptions.
totally dependent on cheap fuel, cheap oil. Let us do
so
that.
we're trying to figure out what's the appropriate scale of having these regional interdependencies,
Yeah.
and not let it get out of hand.
It is about scale. And that's I would say one of the keystones of this whole process, because locality, when you define locality, what you're really looking at is scale, and what we refer to as ecological footprint is man's, it's the human community's impact on the locality, such that the human economy fits within the natural ecology. And those are like, those are relational and scalable issues.
Yeah, a lot of the people that talk about sustainable development will often say there's got to be a balance between the environment and the human economy, and well, they'll often put them as almost equal partners, when actually it's not true.
We're inside of that ecology,
yeah.
because we are utterly dependent on. I get the image that I've had is that you've gone to the edge of the ocean and you stand there in the sand, and a wave comes in and you sink down. It's like, I feel like that's what we're doing on the planet. We are pulling out more of resources than it can reestablish for us. We're losing our ground.
It's true, you see, and this has come as a result of a worldview, a deeply held belief that man is separate from his environment.
Yes.
And this has been for thousands of years, certainly in Judeo-Christian traditions, that man is separate from. And you see, therefore he can have dominion over. And this has created a sort of robber baron relationship with nature. And
robber baron, I like this.
And so part of what economic localization or relocalization is about is rediscovering our place in the natural world as a part of it, not apart from it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
From it.
And so all the work we're doing here in Well is really looking at the models. So we have some courseware. We teach seminars on ecological economics. We also run sessions on values and how those values need to be rooted in place, but respectful of and partnering with the natural ecology. So all of these sort of components are really part of the educational outreach, if you will, that we're doing with each other, and we're learning this stuff as we do it. We bring, each of us have brought different sort of skill sets and experience and knowledge, but we're creating this. It's like we're creating this amazing buffet of ideas and approaches to things, and we're discovering this together, and that's what's exciting. You see, there's no one running this. There's no one leading this. This is the community rediscovering itself from its own history, its own knowledge, rooted in its locality, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really interested in sorting out issues related to urban versus rural relationships in this, because one of the big problems we have right now is the different financial powers between urban versus rural areas, and essentially, it's very disruptive for our ability to localize an agricultural system when land values are dictated by the pressures of housing markets from the urban areas.
Right.
And this is a huge issue. So if there's some people in urban areas that have been the best supporters actually of community supported agriculture.
Right. That's
and
right.
This is a big irony.
That's right. And because it is an irony, because the food grown here or somewhere in a rural area, in fact, that's what's true with our fruit farmer. His best market is back in the Bay Area.
Yes, not in his local county.
Not in his local. He can't get the price
We
in his
used to
local
be
county.
Willits here in Willits, where we're sitting now. Willits actually was one of the contributors to the Bay Area for, I think it was wheat, wasn't it?
It was potatoes was the big one
Potatoes.
after the earthquake, and they helped wood, lumber products and
Right,
and
to
some
rebuild San
staple food.
Francisco after the 2006 earthquake.
Yeah.
So we're looking for some payback here.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, our light rail has become decimated. We still have tracks here. And one of the things we want to promote as we look to this, as Jason's talking about this urban rural relationship, which has become so disconnected, through
imbalanced,
global,
say, because it's like we're part of the extraction coming from the rural is being extracted for the cities, but they have all the financial resources.
Right. So then they undermine their own areas that they're extracting from.
And what they're mainly extracting from right now is people.
Yeah.
So we want to. One of the things we want to promote is reinventing our mass public transport and getting rail and light rail much more efficient than having tens of thousands of cars per hour
Yes.
piling down using all of our fossil fuels and back. There are people commuting, you know, hour, 2 hours. We have people in Willits commuting an hour, 2 hours.
We're in the same
a day.
situation. I mean, Nevada County, you know, the rail, this is gold country, the rail
Yep.
existed all the
Yep.
way straight to Nevada
Yep.
City. That's now abandoned. I mean, there's still the track. We don't have a place yet that we could reestablish those tracks.
Right.
But we're a bedroom community for workers going down to Sacramento, and so the long lines of cars, you know, one person per car kind of thing,
nonsense.
going down to an hour and a half, 2 hours to Sacramento.
It's not only nonsense. People
It's a
actually
waste.
people don't enjoy it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's unhealthy. It's not sustainable.
It destroys our downtown because we have all this car and truck traffic.
Right.
The Port of Oakland is at full capacity. And so what they're doing is they're using the port up in Eureka and unloading onto semi-trucks and driving them through our
Through
town.
your town, to
Yeah.
go back to the city,
And then
to
they
go back to
drive,
Oakland.
yes, then they drive back up empty.
Up empty.
Oh my God!
And we have a railroad system here that
That would be doing all of
that
that
could be doing
just
all that
fine.
and used
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, and of course the railroad system. I mean, one of the great things about, I mean, I originally came from, before I moved to Willits, I came from England. And we still have a pretty effective
You
rail
do.
network, as a lot of Europe does.
Right.
And it's wonderful. You know, you get on a train, you know, you take a breath. There's lovely cooked food.
When I
There are
visited
people to
your
sit
trains
next
in
to.
England, it was so lovely, and you'd watch the countryside.
You watch the
and have
countryside, you
convivial
relax,
people.
you get off at the other end. You haven't got to think about driving the thing because there's usually a driver up front, you know, you hope. And you know, and you're whizzing along at, you know, at an extraordinary speed and going through this. And so, you know, once again, you begin to appreciate everywhere you go through. People in cars don't appreciate where they go through. They've got to pay attention where they're going.
That's
So, you know, so there are so many benefits. And you see, some people, if I may say, some people look to, some critics of economic localization, look to it as, you know, we have to return to the past. We have to return to the old ways. That's not what this is really about. This is about rediscovering what it means to live together in right livelihood, to live together effectively. We're going to draw from the past. We're going to be inspired from the future, but we're going to live in the present.
It's going to be something quite different than, it's not going to be
It's
the
going to
past.
be unique.
You know, the internet alone is
Yeah.
going to deter, which does not take a great deal of energy and provides us a connectivity we've not had before.
Right.
Unfortunately, we tend only to be able to visualize the future based on the experience of the past. And there's going to be a lot of discontinuities in both directions. Some negative seeming to us, some positive seeming to us, to bring together a future we can't imagine. Probably more quickly than we expect.
That's what makes it exciting. I mean, one of the strategies and models we use in Well is understanding the difference between reacting to present conditions based on past.
Yes.
You know, and if you think about what a lot of governments do and corporations do, they spend the majority of their time and energy trying to solve problems which are caused by past action. And you see, that doesn't leave much room to create the future from.
That's right. It's just reacting to
It's
what happened.
It's
what we've been
reactivity.
doing.
You know, what we call problem solving is taking action to having something go away, the problem.
Rather than creating something that doesn't lead to that problem in the first
That
place.
moves you
Yeah.
in that direction,
And
a
exactly.
future direction.
And this is what vision is about. You see, and the visionaries in our culture, you know, the artists, the inventors, the musicians, you know, these amazing people who, you know, architects, engineers, the real visionaries, what they have this extraordinary ability, in a sense, to step into the future and look back to where they are and say, hey, there's new possibility here. You see, and in a sense, we need our visionaries now.
We do.
Unfortunately, most governmental structures are driven by people who are reactionary. They're driven by people who are trying to maintain the status quo, business as usual, lifestyle as usual. We now know that is unsustainable.
Yeah.
And it is, and whether we consciously decide to reinvent ourselves in the light of a true vision for community, if we don't do that, nature, as it's demonstrating right now, will force us to do it. You know, and if you look at the fallout from Katrina, you look at the fallout from the big tsunami in the Far East, you look at what's going on with climate change, with the glaciers melting, and what that's going to do to lowlands. Something like 80% of all the major cities of the world
are in lowlands of the coast.
They're lowlands because they were ports.
That's right.
Okay, so the insurance industry now and the reinsurance, the insurers that insure the insurance industry are now realizing that the current way that lifestyles have evolved in culture are unsustainable. That's why economic localization is the future. And it's the future that everyone is waiting for. And that's what we're creating here in Willits, and along with all these other communities along the northwest coast of California.
It's coming from the grassroots up, because that's where innovators are going to have more fertile ground.
Yeah.
It's not going to get institutionalized until all these thousands of experiments. Isn't that right? I mean, we're just
Correct.
little seedbed experiments in different communities with different flavors, with different fronts.
This whole
But we
thing
have
is
to,
an
we have to constantly appreciate, even though we may get incredibly frustrated at the at the system for not listening to this, but they're starting to realize that these problems are serious, and we have to appreciate the fact that once they get it, they will reinstitutionalize it.
That's right. And we're going to count on them to do that and help make it, broaden it. And
So,
to make
so
it more
try to
emotionally
love them,
acceptable.
even as you're so mad
Exactly.
at them.
A good reminder. It's
And
like
so,
we're trying to budge them.
Right, I'll get mad, and I'll say, I'm sorry, I like you, you're a nice person, even though you're resisting this.
But that's okay, because again, we're all part of the team. You know, it's a real pleasure. We're so thrilled you've come to talk with us, Jeanette.
Thank
and
you.
Every success.
Thank you. Well, and to you as well. Thank you, Jason, Brian, and the whole Well team. It's been amazing to talk to all of you and catch the visions and the sparks and so on. You know, folks, it's just not going to be the same future we thought it was going to be. Welcome to Peak Moment. Enjoy our next episode. Thanks for watching.